Om, 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 om. Oh, honestly unbalanced.
My head looks massive. Right.
Don't cut that out.
Massive and not in focus.
Perfect.
I would love to know. So you are a BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt. You're a badass. Badass.
You're a badass. So posh.
So do you think that you could beat up most yoga teachers? Not that you would.
What a question.
But like, do you think are you ever like at a yoga conference thinking, I could take everyone here?
Oh no, I try not to let myself think like that. It's kind of funny because once you start training, it really humbles you and makes you realize that like there's always someone stronger, faster, a little more skilled. And yoga also humbles you, but jiu-jitsu especially kind of keeps you in check. And I think that if someone is untrained in jiu-jitsu, I will definitely beat them. But you know, I don't usually go to yoga conferences sizing guys up and being like, let's go. But surprisingly now, there's a lot of crossover, and that makes me really happy that there's a lot of really skilled jiu-jitsu guys looking at the yoga practice and getting really into it. And because their natural skills and abilities, they're finding such benefit from the asana practice, and of course that's leading them into the other limbs, and that makes me so happy to see. So
I actually trained years ago on the same training together with a guy called Sebastian Brosch. I might be butchering his name.
Dude.
And who is now he is the epitome of finding a niche and going with it. Like, he is yoga for BJJ, and he's I don't know that world, but is he quite famous in that world now?
Yeah, he was really famous in jiu-jitsu because of winning major competitions, and he's a beast, him and his wife, and then they have their yoga studio. And to see him, you know, he's very skilled at his martial arts, but then how he took that and transferred into jiu-jitsu is amazing. And he's helped a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners live pain-free, and he's just kind of, I love his approach. It's very, you know, Norwegian, Eastern European, that kind of like just straightforward. This will happen, you know? Yeah, to the point. It's pretty special. But yeah, he has found his niche and ran with it, and I'm really happy because it's, as soon as I found yoga through jiu-jitsu, essentially. Like, I was broken from jiu-jitsu, and I tried a hot yoga class, and it changed my life. Instantly opened up my hands and all these things, and I was like, I need to do this every day. And so I started, and that was really what got me in, was this pain relief that the asana practice offered me. And I was fully committed.
That's really common, isn't it? That people start yoga due to either like emotional trauma or physical or physical pain.
Yeah, they're like, this will fix me, or someone just convinces them to go. And for me, I always thought yoga was a bit strange, and I think even my parents and my religious background kind of like gave me a lens to look through that. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. That's definitely not for me. And then when I kind of like dropped my preconceived ideas and actually tried it, I was actually and completely blown away of how good I felt and how much it resonated. I'm like, oh, maybe these crazy hippies are onto something.
And now you're one of them. I think
I'm one of the crazies.
And I think it was your wife that convinced you, wasn't it, originally to do your first yoga class?
It was. No, ex-wife, but business partner, convinced me to go to a yoga class. I believe she bribed me, and I went and never looked back. I was pretty grateful.
Was that part of kind of the initial dating? Was that kind of you trying to get into her good books?
No, we were married for years at that point. I think it was just like she had found it, knew it was good for me, and I was like, yeah, no, never gonna do it. And she convinced me. She's like, no, I think this would be good for you. It was something that like a date night we could do together, and then it turned into a thing. So
I think hot yoga is often a really good entry point for people, isn't it? Because like people that do sports feel that they can sweat and it's a hard workout. And I think another thing that helps people access yoga is seeing people like them doing it. You know, that conversation could go many places, but for a lot of guys, that's like seeing an athletic guy who is competent at sports that require kind of muscular strength, not necessarily dance or alike, although that does require strength, but as in the more traditional pure sports like the surfing or the BJJ doing it. So do you find that you've attracted a lot of guys into the yoga world?
I would like to think so. I would like to hope that I've had a really positive influence. And I do know that I have some brothers in the community that were initially intrigued and interested just because of that. They were just like, what's this guy's story? Like, he doesn't look like one of these yoga people, but he's fully committed and seems to be working. What's going on? And so that is one of my personal missions, to help convert or convince, because like myself, without deeper understanding, you could kind of be quite judgmental. And I think that ripples across so many different aspects of our lives that we're not aware of. And we start dipping our toes in and opening our eyes, you become more aware of what it actually is. It's so beautiful. So one of my missions to get more men into yoga.
And coming back to judgments and negative thoughts, like we were talking about at the beginning, obviously a part of yoga is about stepping back and taking a bit of breathing space and watching the thoughts that are coming up for you. So how do you kind of manage the judgments and the negative thoughts that come into your head when they do?
My meditation practice is a big help on that. And, daily practice of gratitude to try and keep a positive mindset and have that as my pre-frame from the first waking moments of my day has been a huge, huge help, because I can be kind of cynical, especially towards myself. Like, I'm my own biggest critic. I'm a recovering perfectionist, trying to get rid of that. But because of that, I'm quick to notice, and I have an eye for detail. So I really try and filter what comes out of my mouth. And there are the three gates that Buddha speaks of, and I couldn't word for word speak of them, but I do know it's like in my own mind, before it comes out of my mouth, is it true? Is it kind? Is it helpful? Is it actually going to be of use? And oftentimes it doesn't make it out of those gates. So I try not to let it out of my mouth unless it's going to be one of those things. And then often when it does, if I haven't let it pass through, that's when there's conflict, right? That's when there's dis-ease, because I haven't paid attention to that own thing, and I've caused my own dramas because of saying the wrong thing, or I had to be careful with that one. So that is a great question.
What does your gratitude practice look like?
One of the first things I do after getting out of bed is go to a journal and write it down. I've tried a few different methods. It started like that because of advice I was given. And then I had an app, and then I was just like, oh, I got this, and I only did it in my mind. But the actual act of making this little ritual, I find, of taking the time to write it down on paper, other things also come out. And then it's less easy to repeat the same things all the time, because inevitably you're going to repeat yourself. But when you're writing it down, it kind of helps you go a little bit deeper, like a little more detailed, instead of like, oh, I am happy to be alive every day, but you can't write that every day. It's got to be a little more detailed, a little more specific, so that it actually triggers a response within you. I try and at least write something down that gives me some sort of like a feeling that I can connect to, like a person, a place, or a thing that I'm actually truly appreciative of, and to close my eyes to take a few breaths and to feel that. And if I do that, it changes your state. And if I bring that state forward into my day, so usually my gratitude practice, 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that will make my day amazing, and 3 things I aspire to be. So like I am statements or mindset statements that I'm practicing for the day. And then I go into 5-minute breathwork meditation. I do a 4 count in, 6 out breath for 20 breaths, which is about 5 minutes. And then I start my day.
Amazing.
Do you ever miss a day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I miss days.
We were actually talking
and I noticed the difference.
Yeah, I bet.
We were talking to a guest recently. We haven't released this episode yet, a guest called Sarah Titcher. And we were trying to work out like how to get more men journaling. Because she said, it was really, all my friends started when I was younger. It was like a cool thing to do. All my girlfriends were journaling. I thought, it's never been a cool thing for guys. Like, no one is. No. And it's like, how do we get more men to do it?
I think when you actually feel that there is a positive response and that's spoken to and given a technique behind it. Because I remember being taught journaling before, just brainstorm on paper. And it's just like, I'll draw you some doodles, like brainstorm on paper. Like that's not really how it works for me. But if I have specific prompts, and then there's also, there's the 5-minute journal, there's a mono journal, there's a bunch of brand journals, but they literally have written prompts in them. I think I have one of them lying around here somewhere, but it's like, so it's a date. And for me, I'm very action oriented. I like to tick off my checklist and my boxes that make me feel accomplished. So if you also, knowing that green brain mentality, if I have a little box I can check off in the morning and start my day with that also adds that feeling of accomplishment, and then that compounds and creates momentum. So I find if you are goal orientated and you start to see that, like, okay, this is just another thing that helps me set up a mindset and, create some momentum. Often we feel like we're stuck or we're tired. As soon as you create some momentum, that builds and grows. And that's what I have found. So I think it would really help guys if they had one of these journals that had the things listed out, so they didn't have to think too much. Just like fill in these blanks. What are you grateful for? What's going to make you awesome today? What do you want to be? Go do it. And a little quote. That's all you need, I think.
You speak about accomplishment. Obviously, it's great to have goals and work towards achieving them, but do you ever allow yourself to be in a space where you're not accomplishing and just allow yourself to just be in the nothingness? And how do you do that, and how does that feel for you?
I have to I have to plan it. I have to write it down.
And then tick it off. Done.
Done. I did that. No. But I notice I am driven, and I on my rest days, I feel antsy and like I'm not accomplishing things. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do some active recovery. But I find myself thinking that way, and I try and remember that that's not the middle path, and that's not balance. And often I have a tendency to be extreme. And like, I know that about myself. So yeah, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say, how do you manage your time? Because like, all these things that you do, and I've seen like you do this, the surfing, the BJJ. I presume you still surf.
Yeah, I try and get in the water.
And you practice yoga and the studio owning and the training. How do you balance all those things out? And then also, as a side note, we'll come back to that question just in a second. I read actually in a book by, do you know Ross Edgley, that weird guy that swam around the ocean, around the UK?
Okay.
He appeared on the show with Thor, Chris Hemsworth, recently as well. Like, he is just this unit who literally swam for 121 days around the UK, but also looks like a gorilla. He's huge. Anyway, in his book, he was writing that actually there is a gene that they've identified, and it's often nicknamed the Wanderlust gene. And what it means is that for you to get a dopamine hit, you need to get higher levels of dopamine. And so the people that have that gene are more likely to want like thrilling adventure, want to do adventure sports, want to kind of wander and travel around the world. So maybe you have that gene.
Maybe it sounds like I fit that bill.
But back to the original question.
To manage my time, I don't manage the studios. I have my roles, and we have my ex-wife who's my business partner, and her role is managing the managers and managing the staff and managing behind the scenes. I help with teachers, and I help with retreats. I lead the teacher trainings, and I teach my weekly classes and do community. But if it was not for her and the team of management, our amazing management team, it would be not doable. It's like, it's a lot. So I'm very lucky. I have an awesome team that backs me, but to be able to fit those things in, I have to book it in. If I don't in my calendar mark out my training days, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday lunchtime are all blocked out. Dustin is unavailable so that I can go to jiu-jitsu and train. Otherwise, someone will book at that time for a private or a meeting or this or that, and it'll go away. And the same thing with my morning. I have a yoga practice time, and I have my little set times that are non-negotiable, blocked out times in my weekly schedule that even my staff and other people can't book in or ask me to book in, so that I can do those things, because if not, it gets taken away and gets filled with other things. And those things aren't necessarily bad, but I want to be on the mat training jiu-jitsu because I want to stay sharp, and it keeps me fit. And it also, it's like the yin and the yang. Jiu-jitsu is very yang, yoga is my yin, and it just keeps me in balance. And if I don't get on the jiu-jitsu mat enough, I start to feel a bit antsy and kind of grumpy, and like it's such a positive release for all that energy. And if I don't have it, it does build, and I notice it. And the same thing with yoga. If I'm only doing yoga, you feel pretty amazing actually, but that pent up energy just builds. I gotta let it go. I get antsy.
Have you ever had a period where you've stopped doing the other stuff and just done yoga?
Yes.
Oh, you've had that. How long did that last for?
Oh, like 6 months. I was like, I'm just going to focus. Well, and as well during the pandemic, like during lockdowns and that, you weren't, jiu-jitsu wasn't happening. So I didn't get trained jiu-jitsu. And I was in California. There wasn't much swell. And it was like super weird about surfing and going in the ocean. So there's a good 6 months where I wasn't able to surf or train. And so I was literally on my mat even more and just
what was the reason for not letting you get in the ocean?
COVID lockdowns. You weren't allowed to go surfing.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah.
It's definitely
They were making people wear masks down at the beach.
What?
And like, it was insane. Even in the water, they're like, if you want to go in there for a while, they're like, to go in the ocean, you need to wear a mask.
That's strange. You're definitely over 2 meters apart in the ocean most of the time when you're surfing, I assume.
You would assume.
You know, though, the jiu-jitsu people were the people I think I felt most sorry for. Obviously, I felt sorry for the people who actually had COVID. But in terms of sports people, it seems such a far off thing that one day you could like have your face smushed against someone again. Like tennis, well, okay, that could come soon. Yoga, just some nice spacing. But like just sweat and blood dripping in each other's face.
Literally, it is the most full-on, like intimate, close to people sport ever.
So what did people do? Like, did like any of your like
people
friends?
were super parent? Like, I think a lot of people just trained undercover and they had their little garage gyms. And after a long time, I just got mats and did privates and had my friends over to the house and rolled on them. And then some gyms were secretly open and just had like construction paper up over the windows and were running things behind closed doors the whole time. And I think they did what they did to survive. And I think a lot of that went on in kind of all different ways, because even in Australia, people are telling me stories like they had drones flying over people's houses and following cars. And they have amazing taxpayer budget over here. Like they have a huge surplus of money. So they were not wasting it during lockdowns. They were spending it on every possible way to make sure they were diligent, keeping people within a 5K radius of their house and all this stuff.
God.
So I'm very grateful I was in LA during those times where it was a little more slack. And like, whereas you couldn't go surfing and do things out in the open, you could go for road trips and drive to like the national parks and go to places where no one was around. And that was pretty special.
Beautiful.
Did anyone do that? Did anyone like take mats out to a national park, like jiu-jitsu and some?
Did you?
That would be cool. I took yoga mat and went and practiced in the park and did stuff. Yeah.
What do you feel that you maybe a bit of a deep one, but if you couldn't do a lot of what you love during lockdown, well, on the sly a little bit, but what do you feel that you learned about yourself during the pandemic?
I don't. There's a lot of alone time, and it just made me realize that if you're not content with who you are and have a practice that constantly reminds you of like going inwards and being able to be content with just being yourself, you start to go crazy, or you find some sort of unhealthy outlet. And that's what I really noticed, like whether that be food or alcohol or drugs or Netflix binging. Like I saw a lot of my friends and people in my community either go one of two ways. It was either like, I'm going to use this time and get as fit and personal development and do the best I can, or it's just like, fuck it. Let's see. Let's do whatever.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And or they were good for a while and then they kind of fell off and they got sad. I think even towards the end, it was just so hard for everyone. Yeah. I do know people that really suffered depression during that time, and I had my own moments. But I'm just grateful that I was locked down with a roommate, and he's one of the trainers on Apple Fitness, and we became great friends and did cool stuff, and everything worked out. But yeah.
It's a hard period for so many, wasn't it? And I think almost if you're self-employed purely, if you could still hustle, the time probably went a little bit quicker, because you were just doing stuff every day to try and make some money. I guess if you were self-employed as a dancer, then maybe that would be still hard. But I know some dancers that actually grew their profile thanks to like their partner who was really good at making videos. For instance,
online.
and then suddenly
they
build a massive profile through that. But I guess it's the people that actually have normal jobs that were still getting paid, but just didn't have anything to do. Like where we lived at that time.
Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Yeah.
We were in like a 1-bed flat, and we didn't have a lot of green space near us. We had like a bit of a walk, which was wooded, but that was it. And we didn't have a car. It was really like, and we were trying to still teach classes.
Taking it in turns to teach in the living room.
Yeah, like it was hard for us, but a neighbour who had literally nothing to do and lived alone.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, so hard for them.
We had his dogs.
Yeah, he had two dogs.
And
you have
got a lot of love. They got a lot of walks.
Yeah.
These dogs.
I used to have.
What's your dogs?
Yeah. Do you have a dog?
You used to have dogs.
Have a dog? You had a dog?
I used to have Ninja the dog, who was like my son, and he passed away a couple years back. That was devastating.
That's hard.
I haven't gotten another one. He was a little staffy with so much personality. He would literally come to the yoga studio and sit next to my mat in a little donut bed, and his little staffy face, and watch people. And when we'd he'd be like, and make this crazy weird sound.
He'd try to join in.
He would try to join in when we'd and even like through Shavasana, through class, I'd start talking, and you just hear like these little snores in the back.
Stop.
And people at their first time, they'd be looking around like, who is snoring? And then Shavasana, his little sweet little snores. And without fail, no matter what, when I was like bringing people out of Shavasana, I'd be like, take a deeper breath. He'd be like, and do this like loud snort.
Oh, I feel like I want to
everyone
cry.
would laugh and come out, and it was just he was.
Oh, that's so
bless
sweet.
his little soul. I miss him so much.
That's
really special.
so. That during the pandemic, was it, or no? Maybe just after.
Just before.
Yeah.
Like December 2019.
Hard.
Yeah.
Out of like interest, how did you first train him to get into the studio and be okay? Because I always wonder that. I've seen dogs in studios before, but like, how did that begin? And how did
he was. I had him since he was 8 weeks old, so a tiny little pup, and he was always with me. Oh, wow. And by the time I opened the studio, how old was he? He was probably at least like 5 or 6 years old already. So he had already been really well trained. He was super obedient, and he was just like, because before we had the yoga studio, he would come with me to jiu-jitsu, and he wasn't allowed on the jiu-jitsu mat, and he knew that, and so he would just sit on the side of the mat and watch. And just like intently watching me run around the room and do all the drills and watch me roll and just be like watching the whole time, like so into it. And then I think yoga, he's like, oh, this is boring.
Let's go to sleep.
So
bless
like, no one's fighting, I'm
him.
asleep. So I think taking him to the jiu-jitsu gym, and then literally like if I went to a cafe, he would sit next to me in the chair in the cafe. If I went somewhere and he wasn't allowed in, like a supermarket or a barbershop or something, like sit by the door, and he would go everywhere without a lead. And he was the most obedient dog ever. And it wasn't like, stay. I just look at him and like, yo, hang. I could just talk to him like a person, and he was really special.
Adorable.
Was he a miniature staffy or just like a normal size?
Yeah, he was an English Staffordshire Terrier. He was an American. He was an English Staffy. So he was about 25 kilos.
Because I only learnt this recently. There were miniature ones as well. I met one the other day, or a few months ago.
Staffy.
We met one, and
How
we
big
thought
like,
yeah, really small. We thought it was a puppy. But no, it's like 10 years old. And
no way.
And it's I guess it's the size of it's probably actually the size of a French bulldog.
I want one.
Okay, I want one.
Yeah, really, really adorable.
They're so good.
Oh, we're both going to go for a question
Go
then. I'd like to know what it was like living in LA, because I personally love LA, but I've just been with the intention to visit. But I've heard that if you live in the place, it can kind of swallow you up a little bit, and so I'd love to hear your take on what LA living was like.
It was during the pandemic, and I found it really hard. Like, I lived in Venice Beach, and I had a house not too far, like very close to the beach. And I was really amazing landlord, awesome home, awesome roommate, loved my house, but I didn't feel very safe. And after I really, just because the contrast is so huge living in Melbourne, if we were in Venice right now, there would be helicopters overhead. There would be sirens at least like 10 times during this conversation already passing by my house.
Oh my God.
Gunshots, people screaming. And that's just like a normal day to the point where you get used to it.
It's not good, is it?
The way they've changed the laws so that violent crime isn't really something people are held in prison for, unless it like, I think unless you actually murder someone and they have proof, they don't even lock you up. It's like they take them to the police department, fingerprint them, take a photo, and they're out in the street within 10 minutes.
I didn't know that.
So that could be like a carjacking, a robbery.
Oh my God.
Holding someone at gunpoint. Like, it's actually insane. And to the point where people will threaten you and be like, we're calling the cops. And they'll be like, call the cops. I'll be right back. I'm still going to get you. Like, one of our good friends, her daughter was going to school and she'd have to wait at the bus stop. And this guy would constantly harass her, telling her he's going to do horrible things to her, take her away and kidnap her and stuff. And she's like, I'm calling the police. He's like, I'll call the police. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Like, they're not scared.
Horrific.
And so to live in a place where guns are everywhere and there's a daily mass shooting, it starts to wear on everyone to the point where you just notice it when you're talking to people because they're not fully with you, and they shouldn't be, because they need to be alert. And I was teaching jiu-jitsu at an amazing gym, and there's a back door and there's people that come in and out of that. Anytime someone I didn't know, like there was a guy with a duffel bag and he's just kind of poking his head around looking dodgy, like I'm on full alert thinking like, is this guy going to shoot this place up? Like, what's going on? And so I find that really, it's hectic to even think about that.
Wow.
Because to be in Australia where that's not even a rogue possibility and things are really safe, clean, and taken care of, to see that contrast and to actually see it get worse throughout the pandemic and to a point now where it feels like there's no going back. And so I really noticed that where I was living in LA, and I started seeing violent crime and robberies go up to a point where it's like, insane.
Is that
indescribable?
Is that area worse than other areas local? That the Venice Beach area?
Well, the thing was just I think all of LA. So Venice has its own unique problems, but to be honest, like, unless you leave something out, if you leave something out, it'll be stolen. As long as you lock up your things, lock your house, it's pretty safe. And as long as you're not going into these areas or messing with, like, say, the homeless community or anything like that, they kind of stick with their own. You don't mess with them, they don't mess with you. Unless you leave your stuff out, they're going to steal it. However, people are targets, and gangs and organized crime are going into all the wealthiest suburbs and literally just like going to people, following people home and stealing all their stuff at gunpoint and all these different things. So living in LA started to feel really unsettled. What I miss about LA is my friends and the community there. I have some amazing friends, and the team that I was working with at Apple are really special, and I really miss them. And I miss like the beautiful weather, but to trade that for feeling safe every day and not feeling like you have to worry about getting shot is pretty nice. And I'm really grateful to be in a place where I can have an amazing lifestyle and pretty much very similar lifestyle without those factors.
What made you choose to live in Australia? Sorry if we've covered this already, but I don't think so.
I originally moved long time ago in 2005 to live with Nova, and like I was loving Australia, didn't want to leave, and moved to Australia because she would need to finish uni in Melbourne, where she's from. And then through that time, global financial crisis in 2008 hit, and Australia wasn't affected. So we had planned to go to Hawaii or back to the US and just never did, because Australia was awesome, and eventually really put in roots and settled.
How is Hawaii? Sorry, I was going to say, how is Hawaii in terms of what you just
Hawaii is
mentioned?
much different, way different, like night and day. Hawaii is its own country in essence. They would like to be their own country actually, but it feels like a whole nother world in comparison to the continental US and California.
That's where you're from, Hawaii.
Night and day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from a little island called Kauai, the Garden Island.
Kauai.
And like Oahu does feel a little bit like a big city on the beach, but then you go around the corner to the east side or up to the North Shore and it's an island. It's so beautiful and amazing. And then Kauai itself is one of the most beautiful places in the whole entire world. And it has so many microclimate and some little ecosystems within this tiny island. One of the things that really makes me proud to be from there, but also that blows my mind, is that Dalai Lama one time went to Kauai and took a boat ride around the whole island. And there's 2 specific points on the island that are very special. One of these mountains looks like King Kong, and it's a sacred Hawaiian place. And he's like, as soon as he saw it, he just sat there and he's like, this is where all souls enter this universe and our world. And then he went around to the other side and he just like had this profound like experience and was like, and this is where they leave.
Oh, wow.
The end.
I'm just like, yeah, it's just like, okay, wow. It's just like, it feels like one of these places. I don't know. I mean, you've been to Bali, right?
No, I've not been. You've not, have you?
Never been to Bali?
No, never been.
Where else is one of them? Ibiza?
Yes, Esvedra, the rock. Is that what it's called?
So there's Vedra. And there's these places, the magnetic way lines, right, where they cross. Vedra and Ibiza is one of them. Koh Samui, Thailand is one of them. Bali is one of them. Kauai is one of them. Sedona, Arizona. Joshua Tree.
There's one in Bulgaria. I think there's one in Bulgaria.
There's one in Bulgaria.
That's the one that we've been to.
Like they're all over the world where these lines cross. But where they intersect tend to be very, very special energetic places. And so it's very interesting because I noticed myself, like, before knowing about these, there's just like this feeling, this connection to this place in the way that it is. And in Hawaiian, there's a word called mana, and it's also the same in Maori, and it means it's like a presence or a feeling. It's kind of indescribable, but it's like this powerful connection to the land and the environment around you that it's like almost like it touches your soul. And you feel instantly at home and some sort of grounding that you can't quite explain.
Love that.
Yeah. And they believe, this is an aside, I was listening to a podcast with a really good, I think Harvard-based, was he a psychologist, researcher, and he was saying the idea of awe, as in to be in awe of something, there is increasing evidence that it's as much a fundamental emotion to human beings as anger or love. To be taken in awe by something. Yeah.
So we need that. We need the awe. We need those places then those places that just take your breath away. There's something about them, right? Bodies of water. And
you've mentioned kind of Buddhism twice now. Is that something you relate more to than, I guess, traditional, as it were, yoga philosophy?
I really resonate with some of the underlying teachings. And I think, that's where it all kind of started at the basis, right? So I think it all derives from that. But I wouldn't say I'm Buddhist in any way. But I do, like some of the things that the Buddha said definitely resonate. And I do love that he wanted to abolish the caste system and make these teachings and this pathway to enlightenment really accessible to all.
I really like the fact that Dalai Lama says he almost doesn't care if Buddhism survives. He's like, in the future, you can call the teachings whatever you want. It's the teachings and the way of living that are important, not the name Buddhism. If you want, he says, if you want to call it mindfulness, and that's what Buddhism becomes, fine.
As long as you're doing the things, just do the things. Yeah. It's like, call it anything you want. Do these things.
Yeah, be nice to people, be compassionate, interact with the world in a loving, kind way.
What do you think enlightenment is?
You're getting very deep this morning.
You know me, I'm a Scorpio. I can't do small talk. Go.
What do I think enlightenment is? I think that it is when your thoughts, actions, and essentially who you are is connected to your deepest consciousness. And through that, it's not just your consciousness, but a more unifying sense of awareness, and not me, but a we. So this, like, the enlightened beings, they don't see the difference between the guy on the street and their mother, to be able to look at everyone with love. And I think we all have the ability to have enlightened moments. And I like this concept that is not mine, but I've learned that, like, maybe there are no such things as enlightened beings, but people that have these enlightened moments, and they learn to string them together and keep them going.
Oof, that's nice.
That's actually what the podcast is based on, in a sense. We read Jack Cornfield's book after the Ecstasy of the Laundry, and the idea being, I
haven't read it.
It's amazing.
But I've heard some quotes from it. I think
it's quite a long book, but it's lots of kind of conversations with people that one might perceive to be enlightened or have received enlightenment, whether that be monks, whether that be nuns, and the idea being that, as you say, enlightenment is really a moment. And you see how you can carry that on, and you can remember what you learned in that moment and practice it then while you do the laundry. It's a really good book, and that's kind of the name of the podcast, Honestly Unbalanced. The idea we speak to people who are in wellness, and their whole career is wellness in the broadest sense, but we're still not entirely. None of us are there. None of us are fully balanced.
That's true.
I feel like you need to ask like a logistics question, Adam, or like something practical.
And I feel you've done mushrooms or something this morning. for anyone not listening, not watching this, like when you were describing that, I don't know if you noticed, Holly had her eyes closed, waving backwards and forwards.
I wanted to absorb the information. Cheeky little microdosing this morning.
This is the sign that our little baby's sleeping better now.
Yeah.
Because a few episodes lately, Holly's been closing her eyes because she's been falling asleep. Not because...
I haven't. Previous guest, that's not the case.
I would love to talk a little bit about communities now, like as in yoga studios were hit quite hard, lots closed down, had to reformat what they're doing. And there's been a bit, I've noticed in the UK, a bit of a trend with teachers, I think, being a little bit scared and just jumping to what's perceived to be the next best thing. As in, what I think people need at the moment is persistence. Like, just keep doing your thing and hope that people will come back. And it might take a little bit of time. And even yesterday, I saw someone I hadn't seen for 2 years because they just hadn't been to a yoga studio. Like, people are coming back. But I think due to perhaps fear, teachers are like, oh no, I need to do this instead, or I need to quit teaching yoga, or there's a new studio opening, I need to jump to that one. And I'm seeing that quite a bit. So I guess what have you seen in regards as a studio owner, but also as someone who knows lots of teachers in the yoga community? What have you seen since COVID, and how have you?
That's crazy. I have seen a bit of that as well, like teachers leaving the industry and like going back to corporate. And they're like, oh, I'm going to stop teaching yoga and I'm going back to corporate. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, why? And they're like, I want my weekends free, and I want to be able to have my nights free, and this and that. And so there has been a big shift. I think the pandemic hit so many studios really hard, especially here in Melbourne. A bunch closed down, and people are hesitant, I think, with their time. And I think that a lot of people did move online and started an online practice so what I'm noticing is there are people that are still practicing, but they have such variety, and they learned to have a home and self-practice. And so they might do a little bit online and come into the studio less regularly, or some people were just totally scared, or they lived with people that had immunity risk, high risk people to high risk for catching COVID or getting sick. And so they're still like hesitant to go out in public, and they're still worried about this. The studios are doing well, but it's still not the way it was pre-pandemic as far as class numbers. Like, it's not the same. And yeah, I think it is getting better, but it is interesting how you say about people jumping to next best thing, or and I think, like, I listen to a lot of Jason's podcasts about being consistent. And that's helped me so much, because it's just given me like a lot of confidence in knowing that like teaching this class for a week or beyond is a-okay, because people are going to get really good at it, and they're actually going to have skills that we can then build and work on. So that's really how I form my classes and my sequencing. And I think, as you said, when people jump around, they're unsettled, and then that's coming out. What they're feeling is coming out in the classes and the way that they're teaching, because they're jumping around between sequences or different styles and adding things that they may fully embody. So it's a little bit interesting.
You've witnessed lots of different yoga communities, I imagine, through retreats, workshops, trainings, living in different places, and as such got in contact with lots of teachers, many of who are doing really well, but equally many who are just living their life, teaching some local classes. Like, what strategies do you try and teach, especially to your trainees, for kind of staying sane in a world that is actually now slightly competitive? Like, when I started teaching yoga, I was kind of the only guy of my age teaching it in the area that also did some sport. Like, so there was no real competition. And I guess still I have the advantage to some degree that there's not loads of men teaching yoga still who have a sports background and who are interested really in the anatomy. But there is still some competition. So how would you advise students to cope, not students, well, your student teachers, to cope with that? And either, I guess one side is beat the competition, but another element is stay sane and okay despite the fact there is competition.
The biggest and most animate piece of advice I tell them is to not lose their own practice. And something I notice is they graduate with YTT, they're super excited, they take every opportunity given to them, and then they have zero time. And they've gone from literally being in studio every single day, practicing with their favorite teachers every single day, to being that teacher and being on the other side. And so they lose their practice, and within a couple months, they're headed quickly towards burnout. And so my biggest advice is not to forget what brought you, and to not lose your own personal practice, because the biggest edge that you could possibly have is to be embodied.
Yes.
To truly embody what you're teaching your students and your craft. That's what's going to make you a commodity. Like, let's face it, anyone that has the expertise of lots of time doing what they do, like the 10,000 hours plus, and they truly love it, if they're passionate about it, they're going to be a commodity in their community or in their studios, because they live it and they love it. Like, as soon as I think about my favorite teachers, why do I like them so much? For those reasons. They live it. They've incorporated it into part of their life. They embody it. And I feel that what they give me is authentic and real. So how do you do that? Don't stop practicing.
You can't pretend,
do the
can
yoga.
You?
Yeah.
You can perform.
You cannot.
And there's a difference between performing of the teacher, and there's always going to be a performance element to it, isn't there? You know, as someone that's done loads on camera, you know that there is a performance component, but you can't just perform and then parrot what other people say, because people see through that completely. There is no true you to teach, and if people just want to witness a performance, they can get that from anywhere.
Exactly. And it's like, you know what the best moments are? When I have a brain fart, or I say the wrong side, or I mess up, I put two words together by accident, and I say, like, move your fingers off, like, you know, like, something ridiculous, and then we all have a giggle. Like, it was a few months ago now, but I was teaching, and it was a busy class, full class, and in the front row, as I'm demoing, there's like 4 YTTs, and they're in training, and we're flowing, and someone like I forget the exact moment, they either asked me a question or someone made a fart sound or something very distracting. And like, we all paused, like the whole room just went quiet for a split moment, and we had a little like giggle at whatever just happened. And then I went to continue the sequence, and I just had a complete blank, like full brain fart. And I just was breathing. I didn't say anything, and I smiled. And like, I look over, and the YTTs are all looking at me, and I'm like, I had a brain fart, and like the room just died. We're all just like laughing so hard. And during that laughter, it came back, and I was like, okay, I got it. And we kept going. But those moments when you're real are so valuable. It's that moment of connection, because often you forget as a teacher, you put your teacher on a little bit of a pedestal. You look up to them. And if your teacher is this perfect entity and they don't ever make mistakes, and it seems so unattainable, but when they're real and they have a giggle with you and they connect with you, it's so special. And so I think like when we can first start teaching, we could get into these habits of trying to be perfect and trying to make the best experience. And we all want to give our best and give our best experience, but part of that is being human. And being human is not being perfect and allowing yourself to say funny words and have a giggle and be real. And I think that makes it.
There's a nice quote. I never remember who says quotes, which is really bad, but one comes to mind, and it's don't try to be perfect because you'll have no one to relate to. And it's true, isn't it? Because there's no such thing as perfection. And it's when you're a new teacher, it's so hard to make mistakes and not forgive yourself for them. I remember making so many mistakes, but people would come up at the end and say, like, it's nice, like, we actually like you for the mistakes, and it does make you real and it's relatable. So yeah, just
and that's what brings people back to the studio as well. That's the experience you can't get. Well, actually, when I record our own online classes, because we've got our own little online platform as well as other stuff, I leave every mistake in. Like, I don't edit. I refuse to edit it, because this is just what you'd get from a real class. I'm trying to make it as close to my real class as possible. It's not quite as fun, because a pre-recorded class, you can't vibe off people, can you? But that is what you will get if you come back to the studio. You'll get that banter, you'll get the laughs, you'll get the interaction, you'll get the stupid stuff, you'll get a little bit more maybe swearing or like. That will bring people back.
Yeah, you gotta have those moments, you know, like it makes it so funny. I have a story. I'm not going to tell. It's a little bit inappropriate and embarrassing.
Oh, we like inappropriate and embarrassing. Are you sure?
You could do synopsis.
Little synopsis.
Oh, just we were in a full class again, and we're getting. Do you know the pose egg of the universe?
Egg of the universe.
You wrap your arms around your shins, and you hug, and you place your forehead on your knees, and you're sitting on your sitting bones, and you lift your toes. So you're just sitting on your toes, on your sitting bones, and you're in a little ball. And I guess that was too much intra-abdominal pressure for someone, and they produced the loudest fart I've ever heard in a yoga class. And because we're all there and all our heads were down, it was a very embarrassing moment. And not a peep. I was like,
not a peep.
Don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh. And no one laughed, because if people like popped their head up, like, it would have been obvious, and that person would have been so embarrassed. And it didn't happen. And so after, it was just one of these moments I had to hold inside. And then after, a few people came up to me and they're like, how did you not laugh? Yeah, that was a moment.
I quite like that everyone was kind of in it together.
I was going to say, that was very kind.
Like, what's it called? That old film where I am Sparta.
I'm a
It's an old film. And it's set in those kind of like ancient Roman times, and it's the Roman legion is looking for like this rebel slave, and like, who is whatever name, not Sparta, but Sparta, and everyone's like, I am Sparta, and they all admit to being that person, and they're kind of in it together. That's kind of what I see that as. Everyone kind of acknowledging that they did the fart.
That's so funny.
But we call that pose, or I know that pose as wind relieving pose.
Oh, there you go then.
Apanasana. Yeah, when you're on your back, right?
Yeah.
You squeeze in.
Yeah.
This is like not on. This is sitting on your sit bones. Same thing, but sitting on your sit bones. So
won't be teaching that one then.
Yeah, it was my fault. Should have seen that coming.
Should we do some quick fires?
Let's do some little quick fires now. You fire away first, Holly.
Okay, first quick fire. What are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful to be an Australian citizen. I did my citizenship ceremony 4 hours ago.
Amazing.
Congrats. What does that involve? Did you have to do anything kind of a bit weird as part of that?
No, but I was very disappointed. They gave me a gift bag, and there was no Vegemite in it. I got a tree. I got a tree and an Aussie flag. I was like, how is there not Vegemite in this? I'm very disappointed.
Amazing. Congratulations. Is there any app that you use that is amazing for your productivity, that you use daily for motivation or productivity?
My app for the reminders app is probably my number one go-to app for productivity. I make a list of things I need to tick off, and tick them off when I get done.
And maybe you could leave our listeners with an inspirational book or podcast that you've listened to recently.
I was recently listening to a podcast called The Ed Mylett Show, and it was a very interesting episode on how your gut and brain are directly interrelated. And I will pull up the episode quickly right here. And it's the groundbreaking science between your mind and gut health with Dr. Amy Shah. And that was a really interesting episode. They were talking about poop and all kinds of other things, but how it directly affects your mindset, your drive, and your physical performance.
Oh, wow.
And how that's all interrelated.
How are we spelling Mylett?
It's the Ed Mylett Show, EDMYLETT.
Cool, thank you. And
Amazing.
then where should people find you, whether they be in Australia or beyond?
You can contact me on the Instagram at dbrown yoga.
Did you say the Instagram?
The
Like, old man.
Old Instagram, or at Warrior One Yoga. And you can find me in Australia teaching at my yoga studios. We also have international retreats and teacher trainings and some cool things with some other really familiar teachers you might know coming soon, hopefully. So
Amazing.
Cool. We'll put all of that in the show notes.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
thank you for having me. It was a really fun conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.